If you've been paying attention to the last few Nintendo Directs, you might have noticed that there's been quite a few games announced that have some semblance of farming simulation. But you might have been hard-pressed to find the definitive farming simulation game until now. As of May 23rd, Farming Simulator 23 Nintendo Switch Edition will be out for Nintendo Switch, and it is absolutely the definitive farming simulation experience. And for those who have played Farming Simulator before, this should come as no surprise. But many of you might be curious, how does this play on Switch? Well, that's what we're talking about today.
Hey, listen!
Welcome everyone, this is Andre's Restart, and this time we're talking about Farming Simulator 23 Nintendo Switch Edition. But before we go further, let me mention a couple different things. Firstly, big thanks to Giant Software and Farming Simulator 23 on Nintendo Switch for sponsoring today's video. And also, let me mention that we are aiming to hit 50,000 subscribers by the end of the year. It's going to be a tall task, but if you enjoy my Nintendo-focused content, please subscribe and hit the notification bell, and we'll see what happens. So I've gotten the chance to play Farming Simulator on Switch, and essentially, it is the Farming Simulator experience on Nintendo Switch. It is a portable version of the game. Maybe you've played it before, maybe your parents or friends have played it before. On Switch, you are getting that experience, but on the go. And if you're unfamiliar with the series, basically this is a farm simulation game. You can build out your own farming legacy in a realistic open world setting. There are so many different authentic vehicles and realistic ways of interacting with the world in terms of the farming experience. If you don't know that much about farming, this game will definitely at least help to teach you the basics. I myself know very little about farming. It was intriguing to see the varying process it takes to build up all the resources you need, the different types of tools you use with your different vehicles. Throughout this game, you will likely at least obtain a general understanding of the farming process. But this game does have a decent amount of content. There are two new open worlds to explore, one that's based off the US and another based off Europe, and both these environments are fairly sizable with their own look and feel to them. Every single physical location that you might imagine you may need for a farm is made available within these maps. And there are now new crops you can harvest like grapes, olives, sorghum. There are production chains that allow you to experience the full harvest. You can produce flour and sell bread or sell eggs from your chickens. Agriculture, forestry, dealing with animals, there's a lot of options here when it comes to farming. And given its namesake, as you might expect, Farming Simulator realistically simulates the farming experience. However, it also does optimize a number of things. It moves around pallets and logs, you can buy helpers. There's really a lot you can do in this game. At first I was somewhat fearful that it might be overwhelming, but once I got into the actual flow of the gameplay, it was fairly easy to figure out. I do expect that there will be a learning curve for those who haven't played this game before or don't have any farming experience like me, but all the information you need to learn and understand is all there. There's a lot of on-screen elements, and the way it's all organized, you can still clearly see the gameplay, but all these different icons represent something important to the game, and at first it may seem a little overwhelming, but once you get through the tutorial and into the actual flow of the gameplay, it all starts to make sense pretty quick. But my impression of this game is that you are going to have to experiment a little bit. The game is not entirely hand-holding. There were moments where I was trying to get through the tutorial and I was expected to position my vehicle in a way to receive the resources from another or tow something out, and I wasn't entirely sure what these devices were. I didn't entirely understand how they worked, so it did require moving around a little bit and experimenting and adjusting the angles, because sometimes the angles didn't match up perfectly to what the task was suggesting I was supposed to do. It was nothing super frustrating, but it did require a little bit of extra effort. And I'd actually argue that I appreciated that, because I do feel that perhaps there are more games nowadays that tell you too much and don't let you figure it out for yourself. This game still does allow you to figure out a lot for yourself. But perhaps what most of you would like to know is how this game looks and runs on Nintendo Switch. And playing through the game, visually, it looks fairly good. It doesn't look like anything incredible, but it gets the job done. There's not like a lot of blurry textures. It doesn't look like a blurry mess. There isn't like a incredibly low resolution as we've seen with some AAA multi-platform games on Switch. It looks fine. It looks like a realistic farming simulator. And the maps are pretty substantial. I found myself exploring pretty early on, going wherever I'd like, wrecking havoc, and I had a good time with that. Especially trying out the many different types of vehicles and making crop circles. I even enjoyed spending all of my money on a vehicle that I didn't understand or had any understanding of what its purpose was, but I had to figure it out. I drove across the entire map, found where it was, and figured out how to attach it to my vehicle so I can tow it back to the farm. The silliness of that entire engagement and the satisfaction for figuring it all out was entertaining to say the least. But I did notice a few oddities. While driving the vehicles, everything was mostly fine, but when I did get close to the boundaries, occasionally I would get stuck around a fence or on a hill, and it took some work to get away from that. But after some struggling, I was able to get away with it, and ultimately it was still fun to just explore around in this way when I didn't even need to go in these directions. I appreciated the freedom that we've been given in this game. In terms of performance or frame rate, I didn't notice substantial drops to the point where it was stuttering like crazy, but it did seem like there were some times where there was a little bit of inconsistency. Especially when I got off into first person mode. For the most part, I was driving around in vehicles for most of my experience. But when I was done for the day and I got out of my tractor and walked towards the house, I noticed that moving around the camera it felt a little jittery. It was a bit off-putting. But this wasn't something I felt the entire time. For the most part, the game looks and runs fine. There is some noticeable pop-in, like you'll see some mountains and trees clip in, but nothing far worse than anything else we've seen on Switch, and it's nothing that's egregious. They're pretty far out. If you're just focused on going from point A to B or just messing around, it's ultimately not going to affect your experience, and for the most part, I think you're getting a pretty ideal version of Farming Simulator on Nintendo Switch. So if you're already a big fan of Farming Simulator, or you want to try out the farming experience and learn more about it, but also want it on the go, the Nintendo Switch Edition might be ideal for you. And before we close out here, I want to focus a bit on the advantages of this portability, because I do think it makes a bigger difference than some may realize. I think there is a reason why we keep on hearing about more and more farming sims on Nintendo Switch. There's something about taking your Stardew Valley or your Animal Crossing or your Farming Simulator on the go. These kinds of games give you a series of tasks and chores to do that you can choose to do in your own free way. You can create your own experience, but you're not necessarily in a rush to do so. The vibe for this game is peaceful, tranquil, and it's at your own pace. It's about relaxing and de-stressing and distracting yourself from the outside world. And sure, you can do that from your PC or from your home console, that's still an option. But when it's portable, you can take it to various other places. You can take it on a long distance trip, you can play in the plane when it's a very long flight. You can cuddle up in bed and play it that way. Or maybe there are others doing other things at the house, or perhaps you want to still be in the same room or need to be in the same room with others that are doing different things, and by playing on the Switch in a portable way, you can still participate. And thanks to the Switch's sleep functionality, which allows you to just press the power button at any given point, and it doesn't turn off your game, you can pick it up and start right from where you left off at any point with very minimal delay. So playing games portably on Switch is very much pick up and play. It's faster than being able to get into most smartphones, it's faster than being able to get into most consoles, and most other computers. So whether you want to play hours at a time or a few minutes at a time, however you want, whenever you want, wherever you want, the Switch facilitates that. And considering what Farming Simulator is, how there's all these different tasks to do and work on, and it's very much something you're going to want to do at your own pace, I think it fits really well on Nintendo Switch. And considering that it looks and plays pretty great too, I think it's a pretty darn good fit. By the time this video has been published, it will be May 23rd, the release date for the game, and it should be readily available in various locations such as Amazon, Walmart, Target, GameStop, and Best Buy. But if you have any further questions about Farming Simulator 23 Nintendo Switch Edition, let me know in the comments below. This is Andre's Restart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care.